Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening, good afternoon. We're just going to wait for a few more minutes, 2 or 3 more minutes for more attendees to be with us. We'll be starting. All right, I think we can start now. So again, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Our session today is going to be an hour and 30 minutes, and we will be shedding light on local and global movements of air quality in the built environment, and we hope that you will all find it very informative and eye-opening. Do let us know if our voice and cameras are clear. If there is any issues, we will try to solve it. We will have a Q&A session at the end. So please do feel free to prepare questions, type them in the comment box, or raise your hand and we will answer them at the end of the session. Also note that we do have my colleague with us today in the background who will be translating if needed. So if a different voice suddenly pops up, please don't be alarmed. um, all right. So my name is Sarah. I'm the Memberships and Outreach Officer of the Jordan Green Building Council. I am joined today by two wonderful speakers that are next to me on the screen. Catriona Brady, head of the Better Places for People Global Project at the World Green Building Council, and Engineer Ali Al-Mashni, Director of Environmental Monitoring and Assessment at the Ministry of Environment in Jordan. So I cannot wait to get into their exciting presentations, but before we do so, I would like to start off with some small introductory and interactive poll questions to see what you as an audience know in regards to air quality and to really get us thinking on how air quality affects us on our daily basis, on our daily lives, and what impacts does it actually really have on us. So I will be showing, whoops, you were not supposed to see that. I will be sending out poll questions. So you should see a poll question in front of you. The first question is, how many percent of the world's population live in polluted areas? So you can just click on the answer you find most. Okay, so most people answered 91%. Now the correct answer is 91%. That's a really large number. The second question, on average, how long do you think we spend our time inside buildings? Okay, so 70%, 71 now, 71% of our audience answered 90%. And the correct answer is 90% of our time are spent inside buildings. Not to mention, over the past few months, we spent almost 99% of our time in buildings. And the third question, this is a little bit more of a sensitive question. Air pollution is responsible for an estimate of how many lives lost per year. Wow, so 53% are saying 6.2 million, 44% are saying 4.5 million. The correct answer is 4.5 million lives are lost each year from diseases related directly to air pollution. This also includes premature deaths in children, since their lung capacities are much smaller and are more susceptible to pollutants. The fourth and final question. Do you think air pollution affects our economy? Well, 100% of the people answered yes. And unfortunately, the correct answer is yes, it does affect our economy. Air pollution affects our health. Hence, we have almost 1.8 billion days of work absence globally a year. This causes almost $2.9 trillion of economic loss a year. And these are statistics from the World Economic Forum. So this really makes us realize that air pollution has a huge direct impact on our health, our lives, and just everything that's happening around us. So with this in mind, I would like to hand it over to Catriona to tell us more of what they are doing to tackle this crisis. So Catriona, I am going to give you a presenter rights. You should have it right about now.
I think it's working, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Let's see if my slide wants to move. There we go. That's the arrow I'm looking for. Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody from London is where I'm based, or good afternoon or good evening. And thank you very much for having me to speak today at this webinar. It's a pleasure to share a global perspective from the World Green Building Council about air quality in the built environment. There we go. So my name is Catriona Brady. My role is Head of Better Places for People, as Sarah introduced, and I also look after strategy planning at the World Green Building Council. And for those of you who are not familiar with our work, the World Green Building Council is the global network that unites the 70 national green building councils around the world. So we bring together organizations, businesses, public and private sector from all corners of the globe, representing around 36,000 organizations this year dedicated to sustainability in the built environment. As a collective, we're all working together in this. We represent the strongest membership network pushing for action on the built environment. And in terms of how we work, as I mentioned, you can see it just here, we are 70 green building councils plus affiliate members representing 36,000 organizations. Our green building councils are organized in regional networks, of which there are 5. They're color-coded on the map on my screen. The CEOs of our green building councils come together as a thought leadership group of experts. We work in partnership with public and private sector organizations, and united as a voice, we can be a strong proponent for advocacy around sustainability in the built environment. But in terms of what we're talking about, the World Green Building Council has gone through a huge strategic planning process, which is the other part of my role at World GBC that we've been doing now for the past 9 months, really, maybe about 12 months. And we've gone through a process of aligning to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure many of you on this webinar will be familiar with, if not have gone through a similar process yourself. And what we identified and analysed was we looked at the Sustainable Development Goals that we felt there was a direct potential impact and relationship between the work of our network and the ability of our network to hit these sustainability targets in the built environment. And certainly you can make a link with all of the 17 goals and the SDGs, but our analysis, which was very quantitative, showed that the 11 SDGs you can see at the bottom of my screen are the ones where the UN targets and indicators held the most substantial role for our network to contribute to. Now, it's quite confusing to have 11 goals for a global network, so we went through a phase of amalgamating them into 3 core topics to communicate this, which we call our impact areas. And this has been widely approved, discussed, consulted with the different green building councils and our partners. And our strategy now for the next 3 years is to focus our built environment impact on these areas of climate action, health and well-being, and resources and circularity, but importantly treating them holistically as sustainability is one shared concept, isn't it? We can't prioritize one over the other, and that will be a theme of what I am presenting to you shortly. We have a vision for each one of these impact areas, and today, of course, I'm focusing on health and well-being. That's my personal area of expertise, and The goal that we have come up with, that we are working to publish at the moment, is, as you will see on the right-hand side of the screen, a built environment that delivers healthy, equitable, and resilient buildings, communities, and cities. And I think it's so important that we have these three scales of health and well-being that we're looking to work on, from the individual building up to the city scale, and looking at health not even just as an individual component, but as a right that we should all have universal access to, bringing in that equitable, that equity, justice side of the conversation. So, as I mentioned, my main role at World GBC is looking after our global project called Better Places for People. This is one of our two global projects. We have two established projects set up around climate action and health and well-being, and we're working on a third around resources and circularity at the moment. But our health and well-being project is actually both our oldest and largest project, with over 30 green building councils actively participating in different components of the campaign. And as you'll see on my screen, the way that we work to transform health and well-being in the built environment is by firstly looking to reduce the contribution to specific health impacts like air pollution. Secondly, to increase awareness and education more broadly, empower advocacy around sustainability and health as co-beneficial factors, and also to bring in the economic aspect to prove that the business case for healthy buildings show that there is a return on investment for sustainability. Now, these are just the logos of some of the wonderful green building councils who I have the pleasure of working with on a regular basis. Looking down here at the Middle East and North Africa Regional Network, we've been doing a lot of work together in the last few months. Some of you might have joined our Middle East and North Africa Congress a couple of weeks ago. And it's been a pleasure to work very closely with the Jordan Green Building Council over the past few years with Sarah and her team. Now, I think one of the important things to mention as we dive into the content of the presentation is the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. And although we are still not entirely certain about the total impact that this disease will have on us all worldwide, we don't fully understand the way it's being transmitted. We don't have a cure or a vaccine yet, but I think one thing we can be sure about is that because all of us across the world have spent so much time inside our homes, inside our buildings, it's really brought to people's attention the impact of our indoor environmental quality on our personal health and well-being, both our physical health and also our mental health as well. And you'll see on my screen that institutions as broad as the Financial Times are talking now about how healthy buildings are a key asset in our fight of coronavirus in future. And we have recognised within the World Green Building Council network a huge surge of interest in the topic of health and well-being, and specifically around indoor air quality. So let's go into some of the more technical content now. I'm pleased to present to you an overview of the World Green Building Council's campaign about air quality in the built environment. Now, some of these statistics you will already be familiar with following our poll questions, but as you all correctly identified, we know that globally, 91% of the global population live in locations that exceed the amount of pollutants that the World Health Organization deemed to be the benchmark for healthy exposure. So really, the vast majority of us involved in this conversation today will regularly be breathing in dangerous levels of pollution. I live in relatively central London, not far away from a main road, and this statistic I'm sure must apply to me and many of you as well. In terms of polluted air causing deaths, we know that the number can range a little bit depending on how broadly the calculations are made in terms of what levels of mortality they're bringing in, but the statistic on my slide shows that it causes 7 million early deaths a year, considering both the indoor air quality contaminants and also the impact of ambient pollution on our health. But then putting that over onto the environmental side of things, as you can see on the right-hand side, it's been estimated that short-lived climate pollutants have caused 45% of the global temperature rise and the climate change that we've experienced to date. And ultimately, air pollution it's an invisible enemy, isn't it? We're dangerously uninformed about the air that we breathe. And so I'm glad that monitoring and the role of smart buildings and equipping ourselves with data to empower decision making is going to be a key strand of our conversation today. So this topic first really came to fruition within the World Green Building Council in 2018. We partnered with a coalition, a members coalition called the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, who are set up by the World Health Organization, the World Bank and the United Nations to explore the causes and search for solutions around air pollution. Now, we have partnered with them specifically to look at the impact of the built environment. And our goal with this campaign is to promote a sustainable built environment, but to mitigate both the causes and the effects of air pollution from buildings and from cities, reducing that both social and the environmental harm it's causing. More specifically, our campaign goals you can see on screen are as follows. Firstly, to reduce the contribution of the building and construction sector to ambient pollution, to those outdoor emissions. Also looking indoors, we want to mitigate indoor air pollution sources. They're very different types of pollution we're often talking about, but they can be incredibly linked and both very dangerous. Thirdly, to promote sustainable building operation, and I'll touch more on that in a minute, but ultimately we don't want our concern about our health to end up being environmentally destructive and vice versa. And to increase awareness and action. And I'm pleased to tell you a little bit about our air quality monitoring campaign shortly. But first, let's go into some of these causes of air pollution in the built environment that come from the buildings and construction sector, looking at the outdoor air pollution first. Now, I always think this is a very interesting topic to talk about because when we think about outdoor pollution, people often think of transport, they think of agriculture, but the energy particularly used for powering our buildings, but also the way we construct our buildings, the way we heat and cool them, are hugely impactful and a serious contributor to the outdoor air pollution that we know we're exposed to. In terms of energy, it's been calculated by the International Energy Agency that 39% of energy-related carbon emissions can be attributed to buildings. On the construction side, going back in the life cycle of the building itself, when we go into the manufacturing of the materials, we know that the way that we produce even the most basic blocks, buildings made out of bricks, are hugely polluting in terms of the embodied emissions built into the manufacturing of those bricks. Most of that actually is done in Asia. 90% of bricks are produced in Central Asia, but even when they're transported around the world, the way that we construct buildings locally can have these dangerous health impacts too, particularly through the release of toxic dusts and chemicals, things like silica dust, which is known to be hugely dangerous and a carcinogen when it's breathed in. Then stepping forwards and through a life cycle into the operation of buildings, the way we heat buildings, whether it's through traditional cook stoves, whether it's through the use of burning open logs or any form of open combustion, causes black carbon emissions, which, although in many countries a log fire is an asset, it's a lovely thing to have, it is dangerous for us to breathe in. And these black carbon emissions cause 58% of carbon emissions are caused by traditional cook stoves, says the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. On the cooling side of things, we know obviously that coolants require a refrigerant, and often these can produce toxic chemicals. For example, hydrofluorocarbons are often used instead of chlorofluorocarbons, which were obviously phased out, but these potent climate forcers are still often found in AC systems. They're attempting to be phased out at the moment through the Montreal Protocol, but they're still very commonly found all around the world. And in terms of the indirect health impacts they might have on people, when you have HFCs in the atmosphere, it does increase the likelihood of having ground level atmospheric ozone or smog on the ground, which is very damaging to our lungs when breathed in. Looking indoors now, looking at the specific indoor air quality causes that relate to the built environment. Again, heating, when we're talking about combustion of fuels, that's an indoor conversation as well as outdoors. Then an issue that's a big problem here in the UK, actually, because we have a lot of old buildings that really suffer from damp and mold, as well as a very temperate, often rainy climate, particularly where I'm from in Scotland. And we have an issue really where around the world in old buildings where you can have air infiltrating through cracks in the building fabric. It comes into contact with some kind of warmer air from the material inside. It condenses, and then you end up with mold inside your walls, and then that can infiltrate through as airborne pollutants, which can be airborne microbial pollutants, which when you breathe in can be close to toxic, but definitely irritation for everybody who has any form of respiratory disease. And there's a number of links suggesting that people who have higher prevalence to asthma or increased symptomatic response to different respiratory diseases do tend to live in damp housing. Then in terms of chemicals, this is a relatively well-known point, but VOCs or volatile organic compounds are really released from many of the furnitures or furnishings we would have in our home, whether it's your carpet, the glues or the sealants that's holding your house or your products together, whether it's in specific fabrics you have, or even things like cleaning products and air fresheners. When they're emitted in low volumes, they're okay, but once they increase up, they can have adverse health effects, whether that's irritation to your respiratory system or even making you feel sleepy and drowsy, which in a home environment, which at the moment is our learning and work environment, isn't it, is not what we need for it to be a productive and healthy space. A little bit more seriously on the chemical side, there's the toxic material factor, the fact that elements like asbestos are still relatively commonly used or found around the world and are very easily spread as airborne pollution. And finally, something I find really fascinating is the link between the outdoor and the indoor air quality conversations. And actually the fact that because we spend 90% of our time inside buildings, as we saw in the poll at the beginning, most of our exposure to the pollutants that are circulating outside actually occur when we're inside buildings, because our buildings are not completely airtight. The pollution can come in and move in and out. It's actually estimated 60% of our exposure to that ambient air pollution occurs when we're inside buildings. So those are the causes. What are the impacts? In terms of the impacts on people, air pollution is the largest environmental risk to human health. It causes more death than even poor quality water, which is not a well-known fact, and is estimated to cause 1 in 9 deaths worldwide. You can see in the statistics, these range between things like lung cancer, stroke, heart disease. But even on a more day-to-day factor, some of those elements I've talked about, like exposure to VOC, exposure to damp and mold, can both irritate people on a more minor health level, but also impact their concentration, productivity, and general health and well-being and comfort. In terms of our impact on the planet, we know that the greenhouse gases that are being released alongside this air pollution as part of it are responsible for the greenhouse effect that is causing global warming. Short-lived climate pollutants in particular are estimated to be responsible for 45% of current global warming. But more broadly than that, on an environmental scale, we know that the building materials that we use and rely on and construction practices, the way we use water, the way we use, generate, and do not reuse waste generally, is very destructive to natural habitats and also the use of virgin raw materials. And then interestingly, the impact on buildings, I think, is something we need to really focus on, because when we have polluted outdoor air, it reduces our ability to be able to use energy-saving comfort measures like natural ventilation strategies. Because what we don't want to do is to be opening our windows and letting polluted air into our homes. That's not helpful from a health perspective, despite the fact it's a more energy efficient way often of ventilating and ensuring fresh air flow into spaces. So as a result of that, we end up needing to potentially seal our buildings, use a mechanical ventilation system. If it's not an efficient one, that can use a lot more energy than you would have otherwise necessarily needed, particularly in temperate climates. And so you can run the risk of this emissions multiplier effect due to the increased requirement for energy, which in cities as well can be catalyzed into this urban heat island effect, particularly where we have excessive cooling demand, where we know that air conditioners do pump out hot air as well. We can have quite extreme urban heat island impacts because of that. Now, I know I've presented a lot of information today, and if any of this is of interest and you'd like to be able to access it once again, at the World Green Building Council website, we have a lot of this information presented as detailed infographics. So what I've talked about, our campaign, the sources, the causes, the impacts, and a graphic about solutions as well, can all be accessed through the World Green Building Council website at worldgbc.org, Clean Air Buildings and Resources. And there's also a lot of text to support and provide references and more statistics about the content I've just talked about. But in my last couple of minutes, I want to talk about what we can do about this, because I've presented an awful lot of problems, but it's time to think about solutions. And in terms of solutions, we know that we need to be engaging different stakeholder groups, whether that's policymakers, whether it's the citizen, and everybody in between. And one of our strongest beliefs, both within the World Green Building Council Global Network, and I know within Jordan GBC as well, because we've discussed this extensively over the years, but that we need data to empower our decisions to be able to improve indoor and outdoor air quality. If we don't know what our air quality is like, we're unlikely to be able to improve it. So if we need to be equipped with real-time, reliable measurements about both that indoor and outdoor air quality. And the World Green Building Council is committed to working together as a network to increase public access to this vital air quality data. And the way that we're doing this is through our flagship air quality monitoring campaign, which we're calling Plant a Sensor. Now, this is a truly global campaign. Some of you may have heard of it already, as Jordan GBC are very actively involved, and Sarah will talk more about it later, I'm sure. But to give a brief introduction, the campaign has been set up broadly as an education and an awareness campaign. We want to enlighten citizens about the air quality around them, but bringing this focus on buildings. So looking both indoors and outdoors, encouraging sensors to be located, to be planted around the world in both indoor and outdoor locations. Now, as I mentioned, it's a real-time data monitoring campaign, so we will be equipped with a huge range of data. And we want that data to be able to be used in academic circles, by researchers and by policymakers, and for us to be able to testify to the reliability of the data. So there is quite a solid methodology that sits behind this campaign. You can see more on the website about how you would get involved and what the criteria are for participating. With that data, we want to be empowering a global audience for advocacy and policy change, and ultimately ensure that the impact of the built environment isn't overlooked. Because as I hope I've demonstrated, there are so many factors we need to consider and promote, obviously in tandem with other air quality reduction strategies across these other sectors, the transport, the agriculture, the waste, but buildings need to be moving with it. Our campaign platform can be accessed through our partners, our technical partners Reset's website, resetearth.com. You can see the pilot organizations around the world who have committed to installing sensors since the campaign launched in March of this year. And we're working with green building councils around the world to link them up to this campaign. And over the next few months, you'll see a lot more dots in the map and a good few more to come in Jordan as well. In terms of how it works, our participants, so anybody who wants to get involved as a participant, they can monitor and report their air quality data. There is a manual on the World GBC website, which you can download, have a look at. The steps are easy. It's acquiring a monitor, setting up, ensuring it meets the criteria, and being aware of the recommendations we have in terms of monitor quality and grading. And then to follow the guidance to ensure that your monitor is set up and sharing data via the campaign platform. That can be done anonymously if you'd like, for data protection reasons. But for the campaign, we want it to be publicly accessible via the platform. This will allow not only us and our partners, but the wider industry to be able to utilize the data for analysis. And the data is also being contributed to a wider citizen science campaign called Earth Challenge 2020, which is being set up to mark the 50th anniversary of Earth Day this year. So this is what the map looks like. You'll see there's just a few pilot dots around the world now. Lots of the planet needs to be populated with additional sensors, but our campaign is a few months old just now, so we're looking to rapidly expand, and we'd love to invite many of you to be part of it and to support Jordan GBC's leadership in this space. So to find out more about anything that I've talked about, for Plant a Sensor, you can find that on worldgbc.org/plant a sensor. You'll also find from there information about our air quality in the built environment campaign generally, and our health and wellbeing work more broadly if you're interested in that. And I would be delighted to answer any questions during the Q&A period later, but it's my pleasure to hand over now to Engineer Ali Al-Mashni to tell us a little bit more about his work. So thank you very much for now, and we'll speak to you again shortly.
Good evening. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting me.
No problem. Thank you so much, Catriona, for the wonderful presentation and for really the hard work and every single detail put in to tackle this crisis globally. I'm sure we'll get back to you with a few questions later on. I would like to hand it over to Engineer Al-Mashni to talk about air quality monitoring in Jordan. So I am going to give the presentation rights to Engineer Al-Mashni. Engineer Ali, you should be able to control your screen now.
Okay. Where is the presentation? لا ما بتيجي معها. Sarah, I have no control. Sarah.
Sorry, it was mute. Let me give you again the control. Do you have control now?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
Okay. لسه ما اعطتنيش كنترول. Push. Still I have no control.
Still no control. Okay, now you do.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting me. My name is Ali Al-Mashni. I am Director of Environmental Monitoring and Assessment in the Ministry of Environment in Jordan. My directorate have two sections: environmental monitoring and state of environment and environmental indicators. My presentation today about air quality monitoring in Jordan. I have bad control, Sarah. ما فيش لا يمين ولا يسار. Okay. The legal framework is very important for ambient air quality. So we have in Jordan environmental protection law. The law was issued in 2003 and modified in 2017. The second official reference is air protection regulation, and we have two Jordanian standard to monitor the air quality. The first one, ambient air quality standard, related to ambient air quality. The second one is related to limit air pollution from stationary. Our objective, establishing a database. Strong database means right decision. So if you need a good decision, you need strong database. Second objective is evaluation of annual change. Evaluation helps to identify the direction of action needed. Third objectives provide the decision maker recommendation. Our target pollutants. As you know, the pollutants comes from two sources, natural and human sources. Particulate matters, PM10 and PM2.5, comes from natural sources like sandstorms and pollen, and comes from human sources like transportation or industrials. Also, gas emissions comes from human and natural sources. Carbon monoxide emit from cars or transportation. Ozone emit from natural, like trees, or industrial, but indirectly, or human, but indirectly from transportation. Nitrogen oxides comes from burning fuel. Ammonia comes from livestock farming. Methane comes from water treatment units or plants. Non-methane hydrocarbons come from industrial. Sulfur dioxide emits from transportation and industrial, and it could be comes from natural, like volcanoes. Hydrogen sulfide comes from sewer system. This is comparison between international standards. Why we need a standards? Monitoring depends on the standards to evaluate the result. Our standards at the last column is not very strict. I think it close to the US EPA. Examination method. To build strong database requires high accuracy. And high accuracy, if you need high accuracy, you need to operate approval devices from US EPA or European Environment Agency, because these devices work with principal methods. As I said above, we need a strong database, strong need approved devices, because sometimes we use these results in the court, resolving the environmental conflicts. Reasons for air pollution in Jordan. The first one is poor quality of fuel. We has poor fuel quality because the poor has high content of sulfur, and when we burning fuel, the sulfur emitted to the ambient air. Second reasons is old technology. New technology equals less emissions. We have no problem with, in Jordan, we have no problem with big facilities or big factories. We have a problem with small and medium factories. But nowadays we overcome these problems by the EIA studies that recommends to use the new technologies. Wrong siting of industrial cities. In Jordan, we have 5 regions, I think, wrong sightings. In this picture, cement factories surrounded by horizontal houses. So it's affect directly to the people. Lack of transportation. We don't have a good public transportation network in Jordan. In this picture, many private cars, but no one, unfortunately, public. The government works now to enhance the public transportation. Old vehicles and poor vehicles design. In these slides, we have 3 reasons for air pollutions. The first one is old cars. The second one, poor quality of fuel. The third one is bad maintenance. In this slides, the figure shows we have around 70% of our cars more than 10 years. Ambient air quality monitoring in Jordan. We have 5 projects to monitor air quality in Jordan. We started from 1998 in town called Al-Hashmiya. In Al-Hashmiya manufacturers like petroleum refinery and water treatment plants. We have there 2 power stations and few steel industries. So we need to more control in this town. It could be a hot zone in Jordan. The second project started from 2003. We monitor the cement factory in city At-Tafila. The cement factory is close to the residential area and used in that time a bad technology or old technology. They used electrostatic filter. Nowadays they use filter bag filters, so we have no problem now, but the project still running. Study of ambient air quality in industrial cities in Jordan. We have 3 industrial cities in Jordan, all of them monitoring by station and under our control. Study of air quality in industrial regions and kingdom. As I said, we have 5 regions in Jordan mixed between industrial and residential area. We monitor all parameters from industrials emit to the ambient air. The last one is National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Network. This project, a real-time monitoring network with 12 stations in 3 major cities in Jordan, Amman and Zarqa and Irbid. We monitor their residential area and transportation area and industrial area. In this picture, our national ambient air quality monitoring in Jordan. We have stations in 7 governorates in Jordan. In Amman, we have 10 stations. In Zarqa, we have 7 stations. In Irbid, 3 stations. In Al-Balqa, 1 station. In At-Tafila, 3 stations. And in Al-Mafraq, 1 station. In Al-Karak, 1 station. In addition of a mobile lab station. We monitor all parameters, PM10, ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide, plus meteorological data. Future plan, as I said, we cover just 7 direct governorates in Jordan. We looking forward to cover all governorates of the kingdom, especially border areas and tourism areas. Measurement of particulate matter PM 2.5. Unfortunately, we have just 4 devices in all our networks. And we looking to start measuring the black carbon in transportation, in transport stations, because it's very important for health, related to the health. Long-term variation in pollutants concentration. In this slide, it's trend for 12 stations for 5 years, shows our concentration of particulate matter less than 10 microns. The red line is our Jordanian standard. Most of stations is above the Jordanian standard because most of Jordan is desert. And we have here in Jordan from 7 to 9 sandstorm yearly. The last station, it's in city Zarqa. It's into the desert. This trends for nitrogen dioxide. All station is within the limit, Jordanian limit, I mean. The highest level is close to or surrounded by transportation stations, because nitrogen dioxide is emits from cars or vehicles from after burning fuel. Sulfur dioxide, also we have no problem with sulfur dioxide, because the high sulfur is contained in the diesel, in the diesel fuel, and most of our cars working in benzene fuel or kerosene, gasoline fuel. Oil station is within the limit. With the governmental closure, we made a study for air pollution in the period 15 of March 2020 to 15 of April 2020. Particulate matters declined around 46% during the government closure to deal with COVID-19. Nitrogen dioxide also declined around 48% during the cover closure, because no car moving. Also, sulfur dioxide declined around 12% during the government closure. Comparing this to same period in 2018. You can see our air quality index real time in this website, jordananv.com. Thank you for listening. Sarah.
Thank you, Engineer Ali, for the in-depth details and the statistics of what's happening in Jordan. It's very alarming, and seeing it in numbers definitely makes an impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I would like to go into the Jordan Green Building Council. A little introduction about us. We are a non-profit, non-governmental organization and a member-based association under the umbrella of the World Green Building Council. And we are also an organization that reports our activities directly back to the Ministry of Environment in Jordan. We operate through 4 main pillars. The Green Academy pillar, where we conduct awareness sessions and courses. The memberships and networking pillar, where we hold several networking events during the year, inviting all of our members and partners. The research and innovation pillar, where we work on projects and publish studies and booklets. And finally, the marketing and outreach pillar, where we conduct green activity days and campaigns to promote the green message. So through our work, we make sure to advocate for the adoption of a healthy and sustainable green built environment that is a widespread reality and a right to all. We have valuable collaborations with our local, regional, and international networks, and of course, an important contribution from our active members and partners in supporting a community of individuals and companies from all segments of the green building sector. And now, in terms of air quality, what is Jordan GBC doing, or what have we done so far? So since the launch of the Better Places for People campaigns early last year that Catriona has kindly shared with us in her presentation as well, all the campaigns, we as the Jordan Green Building Council have been actively involved in it, such as the air quality campaign shared to us by the World GBC. If you do follow us on our social media pages, you should be familiar with such campaign cards that you can see in front of you on the screen, where each card targeted specific impacts of air pollution to raise awareness on how it's affecting us on a daily basis. We are also a part of the Plant a Sensor campaign under the Better Places for People project. We conducted a members meeting earlier this year to get our members on board with the project and be an active part of future developments in regards to the project. And I assure you that there are a lot of exciting things coming up, so do stay tuned on that. But for now, the World GBC, in collaboration with their project partners, has kindly donated outdoor and indoor air quality sensors to participating GBCs worldwide, and we are proud to be one of them. We have almost finished installing our air quality sensors, and hopefully their data will be available on a public platform soon called the Reset Earth platform. So you'll be able to see our data. Okay, now an exciting news that happened within the last few months is that Sahab municipality in Jordan has also joined the Better Places for People global project through the Jordan GBC. The picture on the right is our virtual launch of the collaboration in May this year, sorry. We have been partners with the Sahab municipality on a building efficiency accelerator global project since end of summer last year. The picture you see to your left is when we started the collaboration with them last year, and we are excited to continue with the two global projects that they are currently involved in. Now, following the COVID-19 pandemic and the nationwide lockdown imposed on by the Jordanian government in mid-March this year, we have witnessed a tremendous decrease in pollution as specified by Engineer Mashni in his presentation. And the Sahab municipality has also greatly witnessed that because they suffer from extreme pollution and environmental degradation on normal days due to their nearby industrial areas. So that is the reason why we decided to collaborate on a second global project with them, Better Places for People, since it focuses on human health and well-being. So we decided to donate outdoor air quality sensors that we received from the World Green Building Council to help them track changes in air quality, which is currently located on the Sahab municipality building. So these are pictures of the Sahab municipality installing their air quality sensors. The data will be also available to public through the Reset Earth platform under the Jordan Green Building Council account. So we are very excited for that. So that is the latest movements that we have started at the Jordan Green Building Council in regards to air quality. And we are hoping to further promote awareness and tackle such crises. Now that the world has seen impacts during the pandemic, it is time for us to get together and work together, basically. So I would really like to thank Catriona and Engineer Al-Mashni for the great efforts locally and globally, and greatly supporting our work as well at the Jordan Green Building Council. I hope that we continue working further towards greater good. So now I would like to move on to the Q&A, but while we get questions from the audience, I would like to give the opportunity for Catriona and Engineer Mashni to ask questions to each other. So, Catriona, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you, Sarah. And thank you for your presentations, Engineer Ali. Thank you for adding that local detail. It's great to see numbers to bring these issues to life and really demonstrate the importance of monitoring. And Sarah, thank you for sharing the leadership that Jordan GBC has in this space. So, Engineer Ali, if I could ask you, I would love to know more about the targets for Jordan in regards to air quality in the next few years, particularly around PM 2.5, which you mentioned is an area of expansion for you.
Thank you, Catriona. Our target not just PM 2.5, as I said, our target to expand the national air quality monitoring network to cover all Jordan. Regarding the 2.5 particulate matter 2.5, nowadays we have just 4 devices. We looking for to add in all stations device for 2.5. Because it's related directly to the health. And we're looking for black carbon, especially in transport stations. Nowadays, we're working to have an accreditation by taking ISO 17025. It's for our station. For our devices, for our stations, to get more accuracy. It's our target. Catriona.
Thank you. And if I may ask you a couple more, and then I will take some questions from you, but a bit more broadly, are you involved in spreading awareness and building capacity in regards to the importance of air quality in Jordan as part of your job?
Please again the question.
Sure. Are you involved in spreading awareness and building the capacity in regards to air quality monitoring?
Okay. We have directorate in the ministry outreach and awareness. They have a complete program and they present our mission for air quality and other things, not just for air quality, but for waste, for biodiversity. And we participate in the workshop and conference. We present especially for children in school and in universities. And we give our information directly real time in our website. I think that awareness for all Jordanian people. Catriona.
That makes sense. Thank you. And my last question to you is a little bigger, but who are the stakeholders or beneficiaries involved that are helping to achieve the air quality targets set by the Ministry of Environment?
Our stakeholders and beneficiaries. Yeah, that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I think industrial facilities itself, it's our stakeholders. We have rangers, it's kind of police working with environment, and we related with many ministries like water and health and labor and منظمات العالمية NGOs. It's all our stakeholders. Beneficiaries, I said, all Jordanian and all visitors here in Jordan is beneficiaries.
That's very true.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Engineer Ali, I would welcome questions from you if you have any.
Okay, I have one or two. If you have any standards for air quality, indoor air quality, the first question.
Yeah, and a very important question. At the World GBC, we have aligned to the World Health Organization's standards around outdoor air quality and indoor air quality. And they have a lot of content about exposure to hazardous chemicals in particular. But one of the challenges that we have as a very global campaign is that we know that targets and benchmarks for pollution levels and chemicals are, firstly, there are different levels of ambition for countries all around the world. It's hard to set one number that's the same. It's harder in some places than others, isn't it? And also we know that temperature and humidity and weather patterns can so greatly affect particularly outdoor pollution, but also we know that comes inside our homes as well, that although there are global numbers, we also recommend them to be nationalized and adapted to an individual country or climate.
Okay, thank you. The second question is how we can build the link between indoor air quality and outdoor air quality, and how we can working together.
That's a great question, and I think one of the struggles with the air quality conversation is that for a long time they have been treated as two separate issues, haven't they? Particularly because indoors people talk about things like VOCs and CO2 exposure, whereas outdoors we talk about things like PM 2.5 and black carbon emissions. So even when the metrics are different, it's hard to link the conversation. But you may remember I presented earlier that 60% of our average exposure to outdoor air pollution occurs when we're inside, which is a statistic that has been published and circulated. And I think that highlighting the fact that many of the factors that cause the pollution, things like how we heat our buildings and how we use energy, can cause indoor and outdoor pollution, and the fact that the pollution can move between the two is an important fact for us to share to ensure that people treat them as one big air quality conversation that just has a number of different metrics and indicators to consider.
Thank you, Catriona.
Okay, perfect. If there are no other questions, we can go on to our audience. A lot of people are requesting for the presentation to be sent to them. So we did record this session, so we will be sending it. Now, a few questions that we have here. I think this question would be for you, Engineer Ali. Do we have any control on burning waste in our country?
On burning waste?
Yes.
Good question. We have open burning waste here in Jordan. We have small control, I think, but our government working to collect all of waste and كيف نتخلص and نتخلص
To get rid.
to be treated in the landfills. But
Okay.
I am sure we have a problem with burning waste.
Definitely. Maybe that's something that we can look into as well. Another question, what are the sources of pollution industry? So for example, the petroleum company or industrial zones, what's the impact of that on the residentials close to them?
Again, the question, Sarah, I can't tell you.
Okay. So for example, we have the petroleum company or industrial zones. How would these companies affect nearby residential areas?
The petroleum refinery is emit many pollutants and major pollutants. We control the petroleum refinery by third party, by measuring or analysis some pollutants. And the petroleum refinery established the new desulfurization unit that reduce most of sulfur dioxide emission.
All right, thank you. Another question, how we could be part of the movement? Okay, I think that question would be for me. So if you are in Jordan, definitely you can reach out to the Jordan Green Building Council. I will be your main contact point. I can let you know exactly how you can be part of the movement. You can be part of the next steps of the Better Places for People Global Project in Jordan as well. So please do reach out to me. I would love to hear from you and have you a part of this movement. Okay. Another question, which substances are monitored with the sensors? I think sensors that are by the World Green Building Council. So Catriona, if you could answer this.
Sure. So for the Plan to Censor campaign, as I mentioned, we have written our participant manual and also some documents like frequently asked questions and things. So you can find all this information written online. But what we have decided to do to make the campaign as open as possible for people is to not constrict the indicators and the pollutants that we're asking people to monitor. So we have given recommendations of different chemicals and different pollutants that an individual might want to consider, but we have not put in any rules that you have to have a sensor that would measure whatever different chemical you were talking about. And indoor sensors will monitor very different parameters to outdoor sensors. And so we do recommend using ideally a monitor for outdoor and a monitor for indoor that would look at both factors. So for example, it's interesting to be able to know the levels of particulate matter, particularly PM 2.5 outdoors, and then also indoors to know whether you should be opening and closing your windows, for example. So we have standards of what we recommend and what is best practice information, but in order to make the campaign open and accessible, people are welcome to monitor one particular parameter or any more of whatever they choose, and then to build up their involvement from there as they get more engaged in collecting data.
Fantastic. Okay, this might be a tricky question, but we can ask it. What would be the recommended distance for living from a fossil fuel power station?
As far away as possible.
As far away as possible. Okay. So what will be the impact of COVID-19 on air quality standards?
I can answer that first if you'd like. We're getting a lot of questions about this at World GBC, and we're actually in the process of putting together a thought leadership article about this, where we're asking some experts from the industry to share their expertise. So we will be publishing something about this in the coming weeks, because there's so much interest, and as new technologies are becoming available and more understanding is known about the disease, people are starting to talk about different innovations, whether it's that we need far more ventilation, whether it's that we need to be treating our air with UV light, whether it's that we need to be reducing our exposure to particulate matter generally. And I emphasize the fact that we don't know yet, do we? So it's hard to give an answer, but I would recommend, if you're interested, there is an article that's just been published by Harvard University at the end of April, where they demonstrated through testing, through sample sites in northern Italy, that where people have a heightened exposure, long-term exposure to particulate matter in the air, to PM 2.5, they had a significantly increased chance of dying from COVID-19. It was an 8% higher risk of death because they've been exposed to air pollution. And this is just one of many articles that I'm sure will come out about this, but the suggestion of this article is that when you have virus particles, and this could be the case for many diseases and other pathogens in the air, that if they can attach to these particles that then float about in the air, it makes them able to travel further. So I think the takeaway for our buildings and for air quality monitoring generally, with or without a pandemic, is that we need to be removing the particulate matter in the air as much as we can. So I do think that the targets and the benchmarks across the world are going to get much stricter as more of this research emerges.
Great, great. Thank you, Catriona. Engineer Ali, do you have any additions that you would like to add in regards to air quality standards and COVID-19?
For COVID-19, the COVID-19 not affect to the standards, it affect for the quality, air quality. The air quality became better. Just, I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, thank you. Also a question, is there an environmental impact of houses made from containers?
ما فهمتش. Again.
Environmental impact of houses made from containers. So container houses.
From like shipping containers, do you mean?
مش فاهم.
I think so, yes, shipping containers.
Well, my first answer would be that any house made from a recycled material or material that was already in circulation is great environmentally, because it substantially reduces the embodied carbon, the emissions that were built into the manufacturing process of building a new house from scratch. So if you think of all the emissions from creating the materials, shipping it around the world, constructing it on the site, the emissions and the air pollution created for one new house out of new materials versus a shipping container or a container that was already created, the emissions are much, much less, which in terms of air pollution is great.
All right. I think this would be a question for Engineer Ali. Is there a penalty of when a business or a company is polluting the area? And how are you checking on these people when they pollute the area?
Exactly, we have a penalty in our law. We have inspection directorate. They visit the site. If they get any problems, they they send official letter to the company. If they not correct the problem, they send the company to the court.
Thank you. I have a person here asking if she can be a Jordan Green Building Council member from India. Of course you can. I'm sure there is a Green Building Council in India as well, correct, Catriona? Maybe it's worth
Yes,
checking that out. Maybe it's worth checking that out as well, but we would love to have you as part of our network too.
You can be a member of both. They're both doing better places for people.
Definitely, yes. Another question, this would be for you, Catriona. Are there certificates for buildings that focus on air quality?
Great question. Yeah, there are a few standards that focus specifically on air quality, but then a lot of standards that look at sustainability and health generally. So the one that is most well known that only focuses on air quality is RESET. So it's an air quality testing certification. They're the organization who we have partnered with for the technical expertise on plant to sensor. But you don't have to do the full testing protocol to be part of plant to sensor. That's their extra add-on. So that's available for organizations that want to certify the fact that they have gone through the process of ensuring their air is as fresh and as clean as possible. But then there are, of course, many rating tools on the market that are dedicated to health and well-being as a broader topic. So some of the well-known ones are the WELL building standard, Fitwell, but then many of our green building councils also have their own health and well-being standards. India GBC actually has a very extensive, very well-recognized health and well-being standard, just because we're talking about them. But of course, then there are broader sustainability standards, most of which have targets about outdoor, indoor air quality, which sometimes are optional. And to use the example of LEED, they have had leadership on the air quality space for many, many years. And that would be a mandatory credit for achieving LEED certification to ensure one was doing performance testing for air quality indoors and maybe outdoors as well.
Perfect, thank you. I think we have space for just one more question because it's already 1:30 over here in Jordan. So how air quality can be improved in desert areas? Because there's a lot of sand and if anyone can answer that.
It's for me.
Well, I think it's for all of us actually, this question. How we can improve air quality in desert areas.
I think it's by agriculture to نزرع to more trees, more plants.
Grow plants.
Desertification, yes. That's the main way to improve the air quality in the desert.
Definitely, yes, I do agree with that. Maybe plant more trees and see what we can do. Okay, so I think we are done with the questions. There are a few questions left, but we do not have time for it anymore, unfortunately. I would be answering them through email if you would like. And also, if there are any other questions, you can definitely send them in through email, and we will be happy to answer it for you. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did and learned a lot from the session. You are welcome to contact us anytime, as I have mentioned, and we hope to see great impact in the future with all of you involved. So thank you so much, and do stay safe.
Thank you, Sarah. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a
Thank
good day,
you.
Catriona. Goodbye.
Bye bye.